NOVA, the project I've been working on this year. So a little bit about me. I'm a neuroscience major on the pre-medicine track, or I will be. I haven't decided the school yet, but I know that I'm going to commit to medicine. So I have a very strong science background. I've already completed AP chemistry, bio, and physics. Right now I'm in anatomy, physiology, and little psychology, so I've been doing neuroscience basically all year. I also have a pretty strong math background. I'm currently in calculus 3. As for my leadership and STEM experience, I'm the co-president of Technology Student Association, or TXA. I'm a member of Medical Careers Club, co-president of Chamber Orchestra, and outside of school, I'm a martial artist in Taekwondo. And so this year, my project is called NOVA. My focus this year was to design a brain-computer interface that is able to type on keyboard. The brain-computer interface is basically a computer that can respond to the signals coming from your head, like the electrical signals. So the reason I designed a keyboard was to target towards individuals suffering from mobility or neurodegenerative disorders, where any of them to communicate effectively or type effectively. This would give them an option to be able to type without having to use their hands, or having to verbally communicate. So my expert advisors, Baishya, that's either my dad. He's my technical and financial director. So he's a bachelor in software engineering. He is the chief of staff at Report, and he helped me a lot with the coding end of it, like all of the stuff I had to learn from Python, because I have no experience in coding whatsoever. So he was really, really helpful for that. And my other expert advisor, Dr. Riona, who's actually here today over Zoom, he has been so helpful. I call him my project director because he has so much experience with ECIs. This is what he does, with his research. He's a lead research scientist in brain-computer interfaces at CyberLink and my support advisors. So Baishya, that's my mom. She's my emotional support, but she's also my research and development head. She has a bachelor's in economics. She's so good at research. She's providing me with these resources, and I'm so grateful to all of the support she's brought me during this year, not just with this project, but with everything. Riona and Baishya, they're my siblings. They really wanted to be some of my support advisors, and they wanted to call themselves my marketing team, which really is just my emotional support, but they like the title. Then we have Baishya. She's right there in the front row. She's my design consultant. She has so much experience in design, in SolidWorks, in architectural, design and engineering, and I really went to her when I needed help on the design part of things, or the look of it, or for my project timeline, just my progress, and in general, she was a huge support for me. And so is Riley Hale, my creative advisor, who's in the back right there. He's helped me so much keeping my project on track. He's helped me when I needed to bounce ideas off of him, and honestly, without my support team, I would not have been able to do this. Also, shout out to the Women in STEM table for keeping me sane and making me feel like we're all in this together. Okay, so my timeline initially in October, November was going to be for my neuroscience research, because I wanted to have a good background in neuroscience before I started a project that was heavily based in neuroscience, before moving to actual the computer research in December. And then in January I was going to take some coding courses, which, because I don't have any experience in Python. And then February, I left it for component construction, because I thought it was actually going to have to build a computer. And then March was for testing and editing, and then April was for presentation. So I would say that the timeline actually stayed really, really accurate. I did complete the neuroscience research in October, November. I did finish off researching my UCI by winter break, and I took a bunch of coding courses in January. The only thing I changed really was February. I took a lot of that time just to polish my code, because I didn't have to build a computer or anything like that. I didn't have to build an interface, because the software or the technology that I use actually just connects via Bluetooth to my computer, so I didn't need to do anything like that. And then I tested in March, and the tests overall as well. So overall research and project outcomes, I earned my certificate in the Duke University Neuroscience course that's offered on Coursera. That was my neuroscience research that I was talking about there. This course is I think over 70 hours of coursework and lessons and everything, and I completed it in 2 months. The target is supposed to be around 8 months or something, but I really wanted to stay on track with my timeline, and I didn't want to push research any further back than I needed to go. That's why I absolutely crushed with this course. I would do it at home. To be transparent, I did it like day and night until I finished it. So I'm really proud of the work I did with it, even if it wasn't, it didn't offer as much to my project as I would have hoped, but it was still useful. My BCI research came from Khan Academy and University of Calgary's research. I learned a lot about BCI just from the journals and records of other brain-computer interfaces that have already been designed. I learned a lot about how they work and how I can build my own. And then code, so I had to use Khan Academy and Kaggle courses to edit my code, because again, I don't have any coding background, and Kaggle in particular was recommended by my advisor, and I'm so grateful, because I believe like my code could not be finished without all the resources and community that is available. Again, I already talked about these resources like Khan Academy, Coursera, and Kaggle for all classes. So this is the certificate that I earned in the neuroscience course. The note guide is really long. If you want to look at it, you can. But the main thing that I took away from this was how the electrical activity in the brain works, because that's what the BCI responds to. So brain-computer interfaces require a technology called EEG, and this is my EEG technology. It's called a Muse headband, and so it just goes like over your forehead like this. And there are 5 sensors for 5 different parts of the brain, and they pick up on the electrical reading. So the higher brain activity you have, the higher the electrical activity goes up, and that's normally what brain-computer interfaces respond to. So from this course, I was able to understand not only where the sensors looked, just based on their location, but also what the importance of the sensors were and which ones I could target for my code. So in December, I started to research on the actual brain-computer interface, and so it is a closed loop. That's over. So it'll pick up signals from the outer surface of the brain, the electrical signals, and it'll send it over. It'll digitize it and send it over to the computer. And normally, in most brain-computer interfaces, they'll pick up features or specific patterns in those readings, and they'll assign those patterns to an output function. So, for example, the specific pattern in the EEG reading can be used to code movement control or communication or environmental control or whatever. So when the brain-computer interface detects that same pattern of thinking in the reading, then it'll send over to the computer and trigger the output. The reason it's a closed loop is because the user, as they're using it, gets direct feedback, and so they understand whether it's working or not, and the feedback goes right back to you, and then the process starts over. Also, something really important about brain-computer interfaces is that they take the EEG signal, which as you can see, the reading the raw here, and it's a little bit there's a lot of little miniature spikes, and it's not very clean. So the brain-computer interface will filter it and pre-process it. I did not pay attention to how important pre-processing was, so you'll see that in my trials. I didn't add in pre-processing until a lot later, and I should have, because I didn't realize how important this was to a brain-computer interface until I actually tried to design it myself. So this was my original plan. Most brain-computer interfaces design epochs. So epochs are distinct patterns in EEG readings, like I was talking about. They only work for significant events in your brain. So when you think about moving or stuff like that, here, as you can see, motor imagery has this specific, consistent pattern, and this test had really juggling, and these are specific patterns in the EEG that if they came up again in a live reading, the computer would be able to recognize it. Because this segment is recorded as echo. So I thought, your brain activity goes up, they'll be recorded in like different types of waves, and like this would be when your brain has high activity, and this would be like when it's low activity or when you're relaxed or whatever. So I thought that I could record epics and assign them to each like letter. Like I could like think about the letter A and then record what my brain would look like when I was thinking about it, and then think about the letter B, and like so on and so forth until I had one for each letter, and I could just think about the letter and it would pop up with the keyboard. So I tried that, and this is what the reading looked like. This is just in general what the reading looks like. So I thought about the letter A here, and thought about the letter B here. Spot the difference. There is none. So I had to change course and kind of shift perspective because I realized that there's really like epics are really only for the significant events in your brain. When you just think about two separate images, especially like letters of an alphabet where they wouldn't be that distinct, then like the EEG or the brain computer interface won't be able to like pick up on any distinct patterns because there are none. So what I decided to do was use these like spikes in code. So the EEG readings, whenever like a significant event happens in your brain, they'll spike or they'll have sharp waves or like sometimes they'll have these poly spikes. And something, like one out of many things that can cause a spike is blinking. So I chose to use that to my advantage and use the blinking to connect to a cursor. So whenever the voltage in my reading spiked, the cursor would move over, and whenever it spiked twice consecutively, it would select the letter. That was a lot easier because then the code only had to detect one thing, which was a voltage reading, instead of trying to train a machine classifier in order to detect epics, 26 of them, plus more for like a backspace or finishes. So here is what it looks like when I was blinking. As you can watch the blue, every time it like spiked down, that I was blinking my eyes. So like the voltage would drop significantly and then come back up. This is just the views as a view from that like my computer was able to produce from the headband, and like these it would drop really far and not that much time too. So the computer was able to detect it really well. But this is like a graphical visual representation of like a voltage reading, but I didn't have like access to this preprocessing, so I had to replicate it in my own code. But again, like I mentioned before, I did not put as much importance into like smoothing out the signal as I should have. So, okay. So this was the first code I had. This was the one focused on epics, and then this is my final code. So as you can see, there was like a lot of changes, a lot of improvement. And the biggest thing again was all of that like filtration of that signal. So here, I have my artificial trials. So before this headband came in, I had to like create a brain reading in the code so that I could determine whether the code would actually respond to EEG waves. I was able to determine it, but this is where I kind of began to understand that I really needed to focus on like smoothing out the signal. So I'll show you both the trials. In both of them, the cursor's moving like really fast, or the signals are spiking really fast. So like whenever it's selecting a letter, that means it's like 2 consecutive blinks in a second. So selecting a bunch of letters consecutively means that it's like spiking a lot. And I didn't understand why this was happening even in like some of my other trials. Like I managed to get it to slow down, but it still was like, it would select a bunch of letters, and then like move on to the next one. It wouldn't really be like randomized, and I couldn't figure out why. It was because I hadn't pre-processed the signal like I should have. But I still called artificial trials a success because I was able to determine that my code would respond to brain readings and they would be able to accept them. So these are the real trials. So this is when my headband finally did actually come in. The first one was like, again, this was when I hadn't pre-processed anything at all. I didn't learn my that's me just like actually blinking and making the cursor move. And as you can see, it's not like flying through like every single time the cursor moved, it was because. So that was really exciting when I finally got it under control again. And I was able to like actually depict that the computer is responding to me instead of responding to every little voltage spike in my head. So I would say that I met all my project objectives that I first painted at the beginning of the year. So at the beginning of the year, I wanted to gain research skills, learn effective research methods because I was really interested in research, but I hadn't done all of it. And I would say that I definitely have. I definitely learned a lot about what research is like, and it's made me interested in research in college. I want to improve my public speaking and my presentation abilities, and I mean, feel free to let me know when I feel like I have. Neurology, I wanted to gain knowledge in neurology because that's my major, and I absolutely have that. Duke course was so difficult, but it was extremely helpful, and I feel really confident going into neuroscience in college. Learning code, I learned way more code than I thought I would because breaking computer interface code is really complicated, and I learned far more than the basics of Python. I only focused really on Python. I didn't really do anything with like C++ or any other languages, but I really got a lot more coding knowledge than I ever expected. This is the goal that I've met the most. This goal is actually one that I added in later because I wanted to be able to study the applications of my interface to paralysis or degenerative disorders or learning mobility, communication, and I really think that since that was the focus of my project, I've been able to kind of cater it to that and be able to study like how this would be helpful. So I think thank you. Any questions?
If you had one more month with this project, what would you do?
I would work on the pre-processing end of the readings and get it to respond to me better because it's still. I mean, it's improved a lot since like the first trial that I showed you, where it just flew through and responded to all like every spike in the voltage. But like here, so these are all measured. Like these are all voltage values, and this is a very clean reading, but the reading that my code is receiving is a little bit different because this is just like how I visualize it, but this isn't what the code is receiving. So like these voltage values are an average, and I had to apply like a bandpass filter and moving average in order to achieve the same thing. But it's not exact, and if I had more time, I would try and make it exact because this is really easy to follow. These sensors are all, so these two are the temporal sensors. They do like ears, but they also are used in visualization. And these two are your decision-making centers. So these are for your frontal lobe, and these sit right here. So all four sensors are really easy to read, and I know like what they do, and how I can make each one spike. But I don't. I really like this pre-processing that we use as done. I just would need more time. Yes, Joe?
So you talked about pre-processing your signals. Is there any specific algorithm that you use to make the signals less shaky or to make them more readable?
Yeah. So like I said, I used like a bandpass filter, which would basically it wouldn't respond to any extreme lows or extreme highs because those would often like mess with. It would like keep breaking the threshold that I had set for my code to respond to. Like the voltage threshold is I think around 200. So when the signal gets up to 200, then it'll move the cursor. But if with the bandpass filter, that ignored like super extremes, so that it wouldn't just like the cursor wouldn't like keep moving because the voltage readings were too high. I also applied like a moving average filter, so that meant that instead of like responding to every millisecond of voltage, it would take an average, an absolute value average, and give like the code more time to respond to each one. And that that made it a lot easier to control as well. Yes.
Obviously, look, you've done a lot for what we have had this year, but did you at least like consider the idea of like how it would overlap thinking of the exact letter versus like while they're kind of thinking about what they're trying to say? Like when I think of a sentence and I'm typing, I have buffer periods where I'm trying to work through the sentence and then typing it. I'm not just going through the word. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. So I think the biggest thing with my interface is that when you have to be like taught how to use it, because you don't like think, you're not supposed to like think of letters as you're using it. So I didn't code it to like respond to specific letters. I coded it to respond to like spikes. So I think that when you use it, the focus would be more on like linking to the cursor instead of like thinking about what you want. I guess you would think about what you wanted to say, but that like train of thought would cause a spike in the voltage, like a break would. So what you could think about it and not like trigger the keyboard in any way, just because like that's not a significant event in your brain, so it wouldn't go up like that.
So like as long as you don't blink, it won't show.
Yeah, pretty much. Like there's more things that can cause a spike in the voltage, like when you move your arm or something like that. Like that causes your brain to send a huge electrical signal because it's like sending the signals to your body to be able to do that. But like just thinking about what you want to say won't cause that type of spike.
So then like neurodegenerative issues where you get like tremors or something with this response order, that obviously like doesn't need to work for everyone, but would it have issues with that?
Yeah, when I was looking into the application, that was definitely an issue that came up. It probably would respond according to that. But if I had more time with this project, which if I did choose to continue it over the summer, I'd probably look into how I can kind of get past that. Yeah.
Would you consider this version
Like using a different command to like get it to me too.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I bet it's probably inconvenient, like if you miss a letter, you have to go all the way back. So this was just like a very basic prototype of a keyboard, but yeah, like eventually I would figure out a way to get it to move the other way, or like move down a row.
Okay, thank you.
There's one more.
Oh, sorry.
So the music band is like 250, but it's